The waiter who served me the orangeade to let me see the kitchen of the restaurant with my own eyes. The waiter somehow arranged it, and I went into the kitchen. When I got there, what do you think? What kind of picture did I see? A stove with 100 pots and pans? Not on your life. I saw there only a small, what is called their midget gas stove, such as what are called old bachelors and man-haters, that is to say, worthless spinsters usually have in their rooms. By the side of this pimple of a stove sat an extremely fat-necked cook of Scotch origin, reading the newspaper, inseparable from every American. He was reading, it seems, the newspaper, The Times. I looked around in amazement, and also at the neck of this cook. While I was thus looking around in astonishment, a waiter came into the kitchen from the restaurant, and in peculiar English, ordered a certain very elaborate dish from this fat-necked cook. I think I may as well tell you that I then also noticed from his accent that the waiter who ordered this dish with a fancy name had also recently arrived there from the continent of Europe, obviously with the dream of filling his pockets there with American dollars. With that dream, in fact, about these American dollars, which indeed every European has, who has never been to America, and which now allows no one in Europe to sleep in peace. When this aspirant to an American multimillionairedom had ordered the said fancy dish from the fat-necked cook, the latter got up from his place without haste and very heavily, and first of all took down from the wall a small, what is called their bachelor's frying pan. Then, having lighted his dwarf stove, he put the frying pan on it, and still moving ponderously, he then went over to one of the many cupboards, took from it a tin of some canned food, opened it, and emptied its contents into the said frying pan. Then, in the same way, he went over to another cupboard, and again took out a tin of some canned food, but this time he put only a little of the contents into the frying pan, and having stirred the resulting mixture, he put the whole lot with precision on a plate, which he set on the table and again sat down in his former place and resumed the interrupted reading of his newspaper. The waiter who had ordered this fancy dish soon returned to the kitchen bearing a very large, what is called copper tray, on which were a vast quantity of hollow metal, what is called fashionable cutlery. And having placed the dish with this strange food on the said tray, he carried the whole into the restaurant. When I returned and resumed my seat at my table, I saw that at another table quite near, a mister was sitting who was smacking his lips while eating the dish which I had chanced to see prepared in the kitchen. Looking again out the window into the street, I eventually discerned the mister I expected in the crowd, so settling my bill at once, I left the restaurant. And now, my boy, maintaining the form of mentation of our dear teacher, I might as well tell you also a little about the speech of these American beings. You must know that before my arrival on that continent, I could already speak the tongue of the beings of that continent, namely what is called the English tongue. But from the very first day of my arrival in the capital of this North America, I already experienced great inconvenience in my verbal intercourse, because, as it turned out, although these beings use the English tongue for verbal intercourse, among themselves, this English tongue of theirs is rather special, and in fact quite peculiar. So, having felt the inconvenience, I made up my mind to learn this peculiar conversational English of theirs also. On the third day after my arrival there, as I was on my way to my newly acquainted mister, specially to ask him to recommend me a teacher for this English tongue, I suddenly saw reflected on the sky by projectors an American advertisement with the words, School of Languages by the System of Mr. Chatterlitz, 13 North 293rd Street. The languages and the times when they were taught were set forth, and of the American English language in particular, it stated, among other things, that it could be learned in from 5 minutes to 24 hours. At first I could not make head or tail of this, but I decided all the same to go the next morning to the address indicated. When, the next day, I found this Mr. Chatterlitz, he received me himself in person. And when he heard that I wished to learn the American English language by his system, he explained to me, first of all, that this conversational language could be learned by his system in 3 forms, each form corresponding to some special requirement. The first form, he said, is the conversational language for a man who is obliged to earn here among us our American dollars. The second form is required for a man who, although not in need of our dollars, nevertheless likes to do dollar businesses, and furthermore, in order that in his social relations with our Americans, everybody will think that he is not just a nobody, but a real gentleman with an English upbringing. As for the third form of the English language, this form is required by anybody who wishes to be able to procure, here, there, and everywhere, and at any hour, Scotch whiskey. As the time for learning the second form of the English language by this system suited me best, I decided to pay him immediately the dollars he charged in order to know the secret of his system. When I paid him the dollars he charged, and he had, seemingly quite casually, but in reality not without that avidity which has already become proper to all the beings of your planet, placed my dollars in an inside pocket, he explained to me that in order to learn this second form, only 5 words had to be memorized, namely, 1. Maybe. 2. Perhaps. 3. Tomorrow. 4. Oh, I see. 5. All right. He added that if I had occasion to converse with one or more of their misters, I should only need to utter any of these 5 words every now and then. That will be quite enough, he added, to convince everybody that in the first place you know the English language very well, and secondly, that you are an old hand at doing dollar business. Although the system of this highly esteemed Chatterlitz was very original and meritorious, yet I never had occasion to put it into practice. And the occasion did not arise because the next day I met by chance in the street an old acquaintance, and as